So with Apple's brand new release of this awesome MacBook Neo that starts at $599, my initial gut reaction is that this is a bad thing for iPad users and for the iPad lineup. And I discussed how this is probably going to be a replacement to the A16 iPad as well as maybe even the iPad Airs of the world, but I actually think, and hear me out here, I actually think that this is good news for the iPad Pro. Let me explain. But now before we do get into it, definitely consider subscribing to the channel and help us get to 1 million subscribers by the end of the year, and stay tuned for some hands-on reviews of these new products that are coming out. But now let's talk about what this means for the iPad Pro specifically. So let's first break down the iPad and the identity crisis that it's had, especially since iOS and iPadOS split up back with iPadOS 13 and I believe the 2018-2019 timeline. I was one of those people who had an iPad Pro who loved the sheer and raw power that it had, and then when it split up into iPadOS 13, I started to believe and think like, wow, this thing is going to start to slowly replace MacBooks because of how powerful it is, and then eventually that operating system would eventually catch up to what macOS was. And every year Apple would give us just enough to maybe think like, oh, next year is going to be the year, and next year is going to be the year where Apple gives us macOS on the iPad because we're getting M-series processors now in the iPad Pro, and they're powerful, and their hardware is amazing, and it's capable of running it. Now that we can see it running on an M-series chip on macOS, it should be coming over to iPad Pro and iPadOS. And then finally with iPadOS 26, Apple gave us some semblance of what macOS on the iPad Pro could look like. And not only did they give it to the iPad Pro, but they gave it to every modern iPad that could run iPadOS 26. We got the floating windows finally, the better multitasking, the file management got light years better compared to what it was before with iPadOS 18, so we finally started to see like the light at the end of the tunnel, thinking iPadOS and macOS were going to be able to run on the iPad and the iPad Pro specifically. Because Apple did have a problem. They didn't have a solution for people that wanted a MacBook sub $1,000. They had the MacBook Air, and you could get the MacBook Air on sale on Amazon for as low as $750 depending on the time of year. But if you walk into an Apple store, the only option you had was the entry-level MacBook Air, which was $1,000. So that's why when Apple brought over those macOS-like qualities to iPadOS, even down to the A16 iPad, we thought that was going to be the entry-level kind of MacBook that somebody would want to get with $500 in their pocket. But not even a year later, while the iPad was taking its iPadOS 26 victory lap, Apple dropped the MacBook Neo, which absolutely washed everything away in terms of the iPad being the entry-level MacBook that people would want as a solution. So now the MacBook Neo is going to solve that problem of somebody walking into an Apple store, they have $600, and now instead of having to get an A16 iPad with the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil to get some sort of laptop-like experience, they can just go in, buy themselves a MacBook Neo, and then be good to go with $600. And now I do think that this is going to hurt iPad sales, especially in the short term, right? Because people are not going to want to get iPads anymore now that they see the value of what it is like to get a $600 MacBook that runs full-fledged macOS and is able to be your laptop in totality because you're not making any compromises from the operating system standpoint. So again, with a recommendation from me, from most people that need a laptop, I'm going to say, hey, go in, get yourself a MacBook Neo. It's going to be a great experience, no questions asked, and then of course it's going to work how you expect it to work as a macOS and desktop-like operating system. And there is no kind of learning curve and workaround that you have to do to learn iPadOS 26, all the nuances that come with it and the ins and outs of using that as your main computer. And now to contextualize the power a little bit, because of course Apple had to make a few compromises here with a $600 laptop, this thing is running an A18 Pro chip. This is the same chip that was inside the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max of last year, so it is a capable chip to begin with, and it still has a similar, if not almost identical, architecture as the M-series chips, because again, M-series chips were built off A-series chips because of how efficient and powerful they were for what they did. But again, the A18 Pro is still a mobile chip at the end of the day. So Apple kind of focused in saying like this is going to be a single core kind of CPU situation where people are, doing email, doing Slacks, using Microsoft Teams, maybe going in Safari, using Pages, using the Microsoft suite of products and things like that. So a lot of single core actions and not a lot of GPU and multi-core actions. But from a Geekbench perspective, I do want to contextualize what it means. So from a single core standpoint, you're looking at about a 3,500 Geekbench score for single core, and multi-core is about 8,500. So for comparison's sake, a single core on the M5 chip is about 4,200, which means it's a little bit more powerful than, of course, the single core on the A18 Pro, but nothing crazy. If you compare it to an M1 or M2 chip, they're relatively the same, if not the A18 Pro is actually better from a single core perspective. But that multi-core perspective is where you really start to see the game-changing capabilities. You're getting a multi-core score of about 15,000 on the M5 chip. I'm not talking about the M5 Pro, this is a regular M5 chip, which is about double what you get on an A18 Pro. So for those people that do need to multitask a lot more, be able to edit photos and videos. While albeit the Neo will be able to do that to an extent, the experience is going to be light years better on a regular M5 chip. And of course that M5 chip does live in an iPad Pro right now, and that's why I think the MacBook Neo is actually a net positive for iPad Pro sales, iPad Pro users, and the iPad Pro overall, because it finally allows the iPad Pro to be just an iPad Pro. Prior to the MacBook Neo, I would normally recommend, especially if somebody was looking for a laptop at $1,000, I would say try to get an iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard, maybe go to the refurbished market, go to the used market, because the iPad Pro is just such a powerful machine at the end of the day, and more versatile, and could do pretty much everything that macOS gave you. So that was always my recommendation when it came to the iPad Pro and being able to get it as an entry-level computer. But what's good about the MacBook Neo is that now that is the entry-level computer, and the iPad Pro can truly be a pro-level machine, whether you use it as a tablet or a computer replacement at the end of the day. So the iPad Pro doesn't need to pretend to be an entry-level laptop any longer, and it can focus on being what it's best at, which of course is going to be things like Apple Pencil workflows, some note-taking, media consumption, gaming, portable creativity, the versatility of being able to be a laptop on the Magic Keyboard while also being a tablet on the go, that ultra-thin form factor, and of course the hardware that comes with the iPad Pro. That tandem OLED display is second to none across any display that you see. The 120Hz ProMotion is fantastic, the speakers are loud and bassful, and even in a 5.1mm thin chassis, it still blows everything out of the water when it comes to that price point and that form factor. You have Face ID, you have a LiDAR scanner on the rear, you have a decent 12-megapixel shooter on the rear. There's a lot of hardware to like, and then of course you have Thunderbolt on the M5 iPad Pro versus a USB 3 USB-C port on something like a MacBook Neo. So again, the iPad Pro from a hardware perspective is fantastic, and it's going to give you way more power and capability than you can get on the MacBook Neo. So the iPad Pro now becomes a specialized and niche device that is a pro-level device that can be used in a bunch of different workflows. You can use it in tandem with your macOS computer, you can use it as a standalone because it's powerful enough to do that, but also in those environments that it's for creators, for artists, for those mobile workflows, for somebody who wants to edit in LumaFusion, but also edit in Procreate, to use the Apple Pencil with all its capabilities, the Apple Pencil Pro, like all the gesture controls and things like that. So overall, the iPad Pro now has a happy home in terms of what it could be. Of course, it still can be your laptop replacement for some people, depending on who you are and how you use it, but there's going to be a pro-level tablet that just also so happens to be able to do computer and macOS-like things when you need them to. So now Apple's lineup has something for everybody at any price point. You have the MacBook Neo at $600, which is the entry-level laptop, a simple computer, runs macOS, and lives inside of the Apple ecosystem. And in my opinion, this is going to be kind of the Safari book or the online iCloud book, because not a lot of people are going to store things on here, so it's going to be the iCloud MacBook. And I think that's probably what they should have called it. Then you have the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro lineup, which is more traditional productivity machines, depending on the form factor that you want. And then finally, you have the iPad Pro, which is going to be for the touch-first computing, and of course, creativity, raw power, and overall versatility and mobility. So I, for one, will still be using the iPad Pro as a computer as the way it is, but then also use it in those tablet and versatile situations and scenarios where the iPad Pro really truly thrives. And now Apple can focus on iPad Pro being the best version of an iPad Pro that it can be, versus trying to get some kind of influence and some usability from macOS and features from macOS and port it over to the iPad Pro. I still believe that Apple's going to at some point converge all the operating systems, and we're going to just choose which form factor we want. Do we want it in an iPhone? Do we want it in an iPad? Do we want a MacBook? Do we want some sort of tablet giant table that we want that can run macOS? Everything is going to converge into one point in the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. So it is just a matter of Apple prioritizing and perfecting the iPad Pro as an iPadOS machine versus it trying to be a macOS machine. So let me know in the comment down below. Do you think MacBook Neo is good overall for Apple? Do you think it's good for the iPad lineup? Do you think it's bad for the iPad lineup? Are you an iPad Pro user? Are you curious about the MacBook Neo? Are you picking one up? Those are all things that I want to talk about in the comments below, because again, I'm curious to know who the MacBook Neo is going to be purchased by at the end of the day. We pre-ordered one. We're going to be getting it at the same time as everybody else on Wednesday, so definitely get subscribed, and we'll be reviewing and putting it up against the entry-level iPad, the iPad Air, the MacBook Air, the iPad Pro, and see exactly what this MacBook Neo can do and who this is for. Leave also some comments down below of some workflows for the MacBook Neo. I have an idea of maybe doing 5 different tasks, starting from easiest to hardest, doing it on the MacBook Neo, and then doing it on the iPad to see which one is better for each workflow. So let me know with some comments down below what that workflow is that I should test out. But that'll do it, everybody. If you made it to the end, leave a dolphin. And if you guys want to watch more videos like this one, YouTube thinks you're going to like these videos right here. Until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace.